since I don't need to read anything.
I got mine in my pocket.
Hello and welcome to Positive Parenting. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Supervisor for the Sioux Falls School District. We thank you for joining us on Positive Parenting, which is a joint venture between the medical and child development professionals of Sanford Health and the education professionals of the Sioux Falls School District. We're glad you're with us today to talk about a topic that should be near and dear to a lot of us, attendance, school attendance, work attendance, just attendance in life, those commitments we make, and how we can keep them, and the importance of doing that, and sort of what that lends to our life in general. So we have our guests here today who are going to join us in this conversation, and as we get started, I will go ahead and have Tracy introduce herself first.
Yeah, I'm Tracy Jensen. I am the social work supervisor for the Sioux Falls School District and also the homeless education liaison.
Wonderful, thanks Tracy.
Jan Lee, I'm a family life educator for Sanford.
Thank you both for being here today to talk about this issue where you think attendance should be pretty easy. We all have commitments we make day in, day out. We should be able to get to those commitments if we don't overschedule ourselves, which is probably another show all in itself, is overscheduling. But attendance. Tracy, you work with schools and social workers and families specifically, removing barriers to getting students to school. Talk to us a little bit about your work and how that impacts the schools.
Right. Well, what we know, I mean, based on research is, the ultimate goal of attending school is graduation.
Absolutely.
And so we want to get every student to that point where they're graduating, they get that diploma and set them off on a good pathway in their life and to be productive citizens in society and all that kind of thing. But we know that patterns start early, and so attendance is so important. So we know that kids that are missing a lot of school between the first and third grade years of life, that establishes a pattern. They're not achieving as well in mathematics, in language arts, and so it's important to get that message to students so that we start them at a young age and they're attending on a regular basis. They're on time to school and getting there every day throughout their educational career. K through 12.
Right.
So,
and the focus, we're in the Sioux Falls School District going through the development stages and implementation of our strategic plan, and a couple of components that really relate to this is increasing our graduation rate and increasing our English language arts scores, our reading and our math scores. And we have sort of borrowed the language from a national campaign, and also something that the state of South Dakota is really focusing on. And our campaign is called Every Student, Every Day, Attendance Matters. And we really want those kids there every day, that they are capable and healthy enough to be there every single day. We want them there so that we can continue to provide that education so that we can increase those math and reading scores, thereby also increasing the graduation rate. It seems so simple, but there are a lot of factors that come into play.
A lot of barriers and a lot of challenges that families face, and it may be transportation, it may be, we are all, as adults, very busy. And, so sometimes it's difficult to make sure that kids are getting up, getting to school on time. Timeliness is also a factor. We want to make sure that they're there on time every day so that they can go right into the classroom and transition into the classroom. And so again, and that helps with that comfort level of that student as well when they're there on time and to be able to transition into the classroom. But there are other challenges, and We do have people in this Sioux Falls School District who are equipped, they have the educational background, and that's basically what they're employed to do, is to assist families to try and eliminate any barriers to education. And so, and that's one thing I would tell parents too, if you're struggling, because there are different situations too where there are family struggles and family challenges that present barriers to getting kids to school on a daily basis. There are also some kids that we know that just decide that I'm not going to school today and I don't want to go to school and I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm just not going to go there. And those are things that we can assist and try and help parents with, try and problem solve, get them connected with community resources, but also, you know, try and help, you know, these are some things that you can implement in the home to try and make every morning a success to get them to school every day. So.
Well, this is a great time, I think, to bring Jan in and talk a little bit about, as a family life educator, how do you work with families, or what have you seen in terms of success for families that, or the necessary tools maybe even to get on that right path? If you've been in a rut, how do you make that change?
Well, I mean, it starts with not only looking forward to what does this affect me in the future, but how does it affect me right now? And imagine if you go into the school and you weren't there the day before and you're feeling lost and stressed. And really what that does in the brain is it doesn't allow us to maximize our potential. So not only are we not able to do what we need to, but we weren't even prepared with the information we needed from yesterday's lesson plan. So talking about some of the things that are really essential in helping a child to be prepared for school. The sleep patterns, getting to bed on time so that we can not just get there and get through the day, but get through the day with our greatest potential and our ability to absorb and to learn. And we know that a stressed brain cannot remember. We know that a stressed brain cannot do well in school. And so if we set our families up to understand that we're putting our children into a place where they're going to be stressed if they come in without having prepared a lesson or without having been there the day before, but also without having enough sleep to really maximize our learning through the day. So I think it starts with looking at the whole picture, not just where our future goes, but how is it going to affect me today, and how can I help my child to feel the greatest self-esteem, the greatest ability to get through the day, and feel good about how I get through the day and my learning capabilities. Right.
Well, that all makes so much sense in terms of those ruts that families sort of get into. How do you break that cycle where, you know what, we haven't really had very good school attendance, or you know, my child has been, as you said, Tracy, digging in their heels and they don't want to go, and something is bothering them, or whatever the case is. How do we break those cycles? Because as a parent, sometimes you're just, you know, doggy paddling to keep your head above the water. And so how do you break that cycle, and really, I mean, what attempts are necessary to get that done?
Well, of course, depending on the barriers and the family situation and what is causing the difference, and the age of the child, of course, too. I mean, if we're dealing with a very young child, we have a little more control about getting them up and getting them there, and have the ability as a parent to just set the standard that this is what we do. With an older child who just, I mean, if you're already feeling behind because we haven't had great attendance, the ability to stay away from that uncomfortable feeling is going to increase over time. So seeking support from people within the school system, I think, is really a big part of that. How can I break this cycle? Outside support, if we need to help a stressed child, regardless of the age, if there's need for that. How do I get through my day if I feel like my day is overwhelming, or that I can't do well or academically make it through my day? It'd be much easier to avoid that. So maybe we need to seek support from the people within the school who can help academically and who can help to support the family in getting the resources they need and getting there as well.
What are some of the resources that are available, and things that our social workers are using?
Well, you know, like we've got our social workers, our counselors. We want to make sure that parents are engaged with the school district. So if at any point you're struggling or you're having issues, maintaining that communication is really essential. But also, one of the things that our social workers will do too is just going in and talking about consistency and establishing patterns and routines in the home. I mean, routine is so important to kids, and so making sure that we've got an established bedtime, and setting up that bedtime. So maybe we have a snack at this time, and then we read at this time, and then it's bedtime. Every morning we're getting up at this time, and this is what you do every single day. The same thing, within schools, they have routines, and they're establishing those routines, and kids seem to feel safer and more self-assured when they have those routines, and so I think that's really important. But again, like I said, reaching out, so if it's something, a transportation issue, maybe there's a food insecurity. Another thing is, brains need food to work and operate. And so breakfast in the morning is another part of that routine, and making sure we're getting breakfast, whether it be in the home or at the school. If we need to provide some other alternative, making sure you're connecting with the school. And again, I think that communication is so important, so we understand what's going on, and we as a school district, and every family situation is so unique. And so that's why that communication is so important, that we understand. And I tell families that I work with every day, ask me, even if you think I can't help you, because the worst I can tell you is that no, I don't have a resource for that, but more than likely we'll be able to find some sort of service or resource, or we'll be able to problem solve this issue. So.
And I think one benefit that we have here in Sioux Falls is such a wealth of resources and people who, organizations and agencies that are willing to step forward and say, okay, if this becomes a greater need, maybe this is something we can address, if we haven't embraced it in the past. And so I know the Midwest Dairy Council is doing some things with breakfast in the classroom over at Terry Redland Elementary, where identified need that, sometimes that hectic morning routine, perhaps families that have parents who are both working in the morning, and the children are often getting themselves on the bus into school at the time, in the morning on time. And then, gosh, we have to think about breakfast too. And so the Midwest Dairy Council has stepped up with a grant and said, hey, let's provide breakfast in the classroom so that students can have that fuel to start the day. And so, that's one of the things I think we're really blessed with is organizations that see a need step up and figure out how they can fulfill that need. Tracy, I know you're you've been tasked with sort of leading a committee on attendance and looking at some of those issues that have created concern in certain different areas. What is that work? What direction is that work taking, and what have you found so far?
It's new. It's in its infant stage, and so we're looking at the cause of chronic absenteeism or irregular attendance, depending on how you want to define it. And we're looking at, kids who miss more than 10 days of school a year. There's a direct correlation, a direct connection as having a negative impact on their academic achievement. And we're not focused necessarily on, those that do maybe have chronic medical conditions, because we know that's very legitimate, and there's other services that are offered through the Sioux Falls School District, such as homebound instruction and that kind of thing, or kids that maybe are going on an extended trip, but their grades aren't really impacted.
They're okay.
Yeah, they're not. It's not impacted by that, and so looking at that, and so some of the things we've been looking at are, poverty-related issues, mental health-related issues, substance abuse, transportation issues, and kind of that those students who can't, because there is some sort of, whether it be a private family situation that they can't attend, or a societal issue where they can't attend, or those who won't attend, and it's just those skippers. I mean, we do have parents that call in the school and say, I've been trying to get my kid to school, and they are basically telling me I'm not going. And again, you talked about when they're younger, as a kindergartner, first, second grade, we can pick them up, we can put them in the car, and we can drive them to school, and we can get assistance to help haul them in. When they're, 11th or 12th graders, they're not as easy to pick up and put into the car. And so there's a difference there. And so looking at, too, the fact that we understand that there's probably not one type of intervention
Right.
that is going to have an impact, but it needs to be multifaceted, and we need to come from several different areas to intervene. And so we're currently researching different evidence-based interventions to try and figure out, what will help impact student attendance, increase their academic achievement, and eventually, hopefully, increase graduation rates as well. So.
Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning that graduation, that is our ultimate goal,
Yeah.
and there's lots of different steps along the way. But all of those patterns then do tend to lend themselves to how we as adults interact, and if we get to school on our school, well, we might be at school if we're adults, but getting us to work on time as well.
Yes.
And just that pattern, and that starting early is really the best option if we're going to create a great work environment or workforce as well.
Right. I mean, what happens is we're not dealing, our brains are developed at 25 years. So when you're only halfway there, it's hard to see your future and hard to see your employability being an issue for you at the time. And so, a teenage mind might not see that as, oh, that's way off, I'm fine now, it isn't important to me yet. But helping them to understand what's coming up for them. It isn't just, are you going to be employable? It isn't just, are you going to be able to get to work on time? It's, will you want a job that you have? I mean, can you get a job that you want? Because you have set yourself up for success for that, and you can look forward and say, anything I want to do is something I can achieve in my future because I've set myself up for that kind of success. Or will I be stuck in a job that I just really do not enjoy and don't look forward to because I didn't help myself to prepare that way? It's tough to work with that because sometimes when a brain isn't quite fully there, we just see the here and now, and yes, that's somewhere in my future, but right now this is a much more comfortable place to be. So helping to motivate them to understand that today does affect what your future is, and habits we put, that we put forward today will affect us in the future and help us to achieve what we really want to achieve long term.
I'm privileged to serve as a chair on the Sioux Falls Chamber's Education and Workforce Development Committee, and one of the things we talk about as well is developing that workforce over time, and sort of how, yes, the students need their academic backgrounds in order to be successful in a workforce in the future, but also that key component of attendance and being there and having somebody being able to count on you, and you being able to count on someone else, because if somebody else in your team or in your workplace has chronic absence as an adult, then you can't count on them, they can't count on you. I mean, it definitely does filter over into that workplace. And sometimes, if parents are dealing with a child with chronic absence and they're working really hard, then that causes them to miss work as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's just sort of a domino effect over time.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one thing, we talk about, I think there's a misconception too, where at the elementary level, well, they're not achieving high school credit. It's not really going towards graduation, and that's not the case because those patterns are established very early on.
Right.
And so going over, but also we do have parents too that if their kids are missing school and they're having to stay home and take care of them, that is impacting their work life. And so if they start missing a lot of work, all of a sudden their job is in jeopardy. And then we can go back and we can see that filter over and go over to the fact that if they're in jeopardy of losing their job, that could send the family into poverty, and that creates more issues. And again, so it's there are so many different things. It's cyclical, and there are so many different things that come into and play into that attendance, the work, and just sustaining family life. And a lot of it does. I mean, it does come back to attendance and graduation rates and all that kind of thing.
Right. And the stress, I know that's something you've focused on, is that stress for the child, stress for the parent who's trying to get the child out of bed to go to school in the morning, and all of that sort of sets up a recipe for disaster in a home life situation.
For sure, and it sets up who we are as a person, our self-esteem as we grow up, how we feel about ourselves, and if we set up new skills to learn about how to deal with situations, or if we look to avoidance to deal with our stress. And those are lifelong skills that really follow us all the way through. So if we learn how to deal with well, it's stressful to go to school today because I have a test and I'd rather avoid it. Or if I learn a new skill set that says, well, in order to combat this, I'm going to, go forward this way. And again, I think stepping in and asking for some help from the school system and saying, wow, I have test anxiety, or I have some barriers that are like that. How do I get past that? Because it really builds the whole self and our self-esteem. And we either learn new skills in dealing with stress or we avoid them, and that can set us up for a lifelong pattern, not just in the workforce, but in feeling good about who we are.
And really probably lend themselves to mental health challenges, or like that anxiety, the depression, those kinds of things that really, again, sort of get the snowball going, and then it's hard to break the cycle.
Right, and help me with my confidence to come back in the next day, help me with feeling good about every kind of event, every kind of barrier that may come my way, overcoming those barriers, and learning skills that do that. Those are really important skills that start very young, as we said, where you get to learn how do I deal with these kind of barriers, and if I learn that I can just avoid them, it sets us up for some very difficult positions much later in life. And I think that is one thing that parents can help with, is helping them to have the confidence to go in regardless. And how are we going to help you with this new skill set? And what kind of skill set do we need to help you to get through this part of it?
And you bring up a good point there with, I think parents can role model for their kids. So if the child is struggling, and because a lot of times that's your first point of contact, the parent or the child comes home and says, Mom or Dad, I don't want to go to school tomorrow because of a test, or I've got a issue with another child, or whatever else. So role modeling for the child of, okay, so what do you do in that situation, and how do you seek out help? And so, contacting, and we're going to go in and we're going to talk to somebody at the school, and we're going to figure this out, and we can figure this out together. And I think that's a good, again, that role modeling and setting up and adding a skill to that child so they understand, okay, this is how it works.
Now I know how to ask for help, and where to go if there are those needs. Yeah, absolutely. And then those skills, just hopefully those positive skills, will trickle over and continue then into later in life as well. So wonderful pieces of information. When we get to, I know your work, as you said, in this attendance committee is quite new, and is there a goal in terms of increasing attendance specifically? I know there's goals in terms of increasing the graduation rate, increasing the math and reading scores, but it seems to make so much sense that we can't do those things. We can't increase math and reading scores or increase the graduation rate if the kids aren't in school.
Right. Well, and I think the ultimate goal, and this would be, pie in the sky type thing, would be every student, every day, their butt is in that seat and they're learning, I mean, that would be our ultimate goal. But we know that again, is pie in the sky, and it's probably not realistic. But we want to make sure that every student that can be in school, on the days that they can be in school, that they are there, and that we're working and providing interventions that eliminate any barrier to them getting there. We're working with parents. We're trying to engage students and parents to make sure that kids want to be in school, and that the parents are really sending that message to their kids that education is important. I mean, they talk about even starting the conversation with your kindergarten and first graders about college. That talk about it. Now, college, I don't believe, is necessarily a pathway for everybody, but starting to talk that there's something else out there.
Beyond graduation.
Beyond
Graduation is not the end.
Graduation is not the end. Yeah, there's something else, and so this is, and also talking about how exciting those mile markers are, and what it looks like. So in elementary, what it looks like when you go to middle school, and how exciting that will be. And instead of being in one classroom, you're going to be moving from class to class. And when you go to high school, and even
choices on classes.
The choices on classes, and even looking at, here in Sioux Falls, driving by the school, that's the high school that you are going to eventually attend. And so making it a very exciting, encouraging thing, so that when they're younger, they start picturing this image in their mind that that's where I'm going to go, and that's what I'm going to do. And also just saying, you can be successful. I know students, and I've had parents say, they came home, a student came home very defeated because of maybe it was a spelling test or a chemistry test or whatever it was. And it's like, okay, well, let's figure this out, let's learn it together, and then let's move forward. That's one incident. You have a whole year. It doesn't define you. You have a whole year. And it's exciting that, okay, you might not have got it now, but let's figure out how you can get it and how you can understand it. And then once they do, celebrate that. And when celebrate, I mean a high five and just saying, that's wonderful. 2 days ago you didn't understand this, and today you do. That's incredible. And just, some of those little things I think that parents can do, and to encourage their kids.
Absolutely. And that support increases self-esteem and ultimately makes us all feel better. If our kids are feeling good, we're feeling better and more confident, and we're not worrying about them or stressing about things either.
Right.
So.
Or even as they peak an interest in an area, you're looking forward. Even in kindergarten, they watch the Olympics, they get inspired by that. I think you could be that person. I think that could be you. How are we going to get there? It starts today, that we look at how we're going to get those kind of goals. The Olympians didn't walk in and just become Olympians. They worked on it very hard. So we instill those kind of values that say, I'm working towards a goal, I'm working towards what I want to get to, and have the persistence to get there. But, I think even in the very young child, saying you can be anything that you want to be, but if you want to get there, you're not going to get there by not attending school.
Right. Well, we have come to the end of our time. We hope that the message that you've gotten from this program today is that every student, every day, attendance does in fact matter, not just for graduation rates and reading achievement and things like that, but really attendance matters in life. We have to show up if we want to be successful in life. So thank you for joining us today on Positive Parenting.